Sex rules. Freud said everything was based on sexuality. He even called babies polymorphous perverse, meaning that they derived some kind of sexual pleasure from everything. Everything was oral, everything was genital, and then there were phases that he made up. And birds do it, bees do it. The world goes around and reproduces because of sexuality. There's all kinds of variations of even sexual reproduction. Isn't it true that male seahorses carry the babies or something? I don't know. There's so much variation, and it is fascinating. And certainly human life is dominated by sexuality. And I remember when I first encountered nakedness as a thing, I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and one of the older boys in the neighborhood had a deck of cards where each card had a naked woman on it. And I was fascinated. I'd never seen a naked woman, and they were in certain poses that I'd never seen a person be in a pose like that. So I admit I was fascinated and I wasn't educated. My parents never had that talk with me at all. I was on my own, except what I learned, from my peers. I just remember some songs from when I was a kid. Let me put it this way, it rhymed with Old Dan Tucker. We used to, snicker about saying curse words, powerful, powerful stuff. I want to talk about the bonobo monkeys for a minute. Bonobo monkeys are chimpanzees who have sex all the time. And unlike other chimp groups, these bonobos are governed by the females of the species. They're the dominant ones. And the bonobo monkeys are peaceful. They don't fight. They're the hippies of the primate world. They are the only other primates or mammals other than human beings that have sex face to face. But they have sex not only face to face, they have all kinds of sex, homosexual, heterosexual, and they don't fight. They make love, not war. Other chimps are known to be violent and aggressive. Most monkeys are. It seems like we humans have the choice whether to go the way of the bonobo or the way of the other violent monkeys. And it also turns out that the cultures where sexuality is taboo or repressed are the ones that have the most crime, the most rape, the most weirdness. There are certain cultures, small tribal cultures, where at puberty, the children are allowed to live in their own hut or something, and they're allowed to touch and explore each other sexually. And then at a certain age of maturity, they bond with one on one and have children. But these tribes are also very, very peaceful. There's no crime. They also had no real problems as a culture. And when I reflect on my own personal sexuality, having to figure things out on my own. Puberty was scary and weird. And I was already getting a lot of cultural messages about what it means to be a man. And smoking was in there with being sexy. And thank God we're done with that stupidness. But I had to live through and outgrow a lot of myths. And then I want to talk about biology a little bit. Orgasm really releases certain hormones like a flood of oxytocin. It's a connective thing. It's a relief of tension. So it solves a lot of things. Besides adding pleasure, it really helps us cope with pain. And so sexuality is seriously abused like a drug. We use it as a way to avoid pain. In the same way that we use food to avoid pain, we'll use the pleasure of food to negate or somehow counteract pain, which of course is a strategy that really doesn't work. The same thing with sex. And it has taken me personally many years of being awkward and stupid and a jerk using women and using sexuality to just feel better when I actually feel bad. Thank God I've learned how to deal with pain in much more direct ways so that I can free my own sexuality from the pain aspect, altogether, which reveals to me, and I tell you, I am a student. I am a student of sex. I'm 74 years old and I am a student. But one thing I'm noticing is that the more heart energy I invest, the better. It's just sweet closeness and love and getting high and feeling good, not to avoid anything, but to actually just be more and more present to the essence of reality, you know? Sex has a long time been the left-handed path to spirituality, which is more noticeable in the East, in India, where there's whole temples, that show men and women in all different kinds of positions. And there have been cultures in the past that have been very, very sexual, but they have messed it up by including class and status in it, so that rich and wealthy people had slaves and they were free to do whatever they wanted with slaves. And it just wasn't kind-hearted. It wasn't nice. It wasn't egalitarian. It was mean-spirited and, I would say stupid at this point. It was just, ugh, disgusting, really. It was at other people's expense, and everybody accepted that's just the way it is. And then, of course, pedophilia has a history of being acceptable in certain cultures, but I imagine that in any culture, no matter what the belief system, for children, it would be weird. Children are new to everything. They're not culturally indoctrinated yet. And based on my own experience as a child, a premature introduction into sexuality would be very wrong and traumatizing. So I don't care if it was accepted in former cultures. Pedophilia is just wrong. It's biologically wrong. It is morally wrong. Even in prison, pedophiles, they get punished, even by criminal people. So there is an understanding that pedophilia is just way off base at every level. Let's talk about homosexuality for a moment. There's lots of evidence that there's a certain percentage of homosexual activity in the animal kingdom. So the idea that homosexuality is unnatural just doesn't pan out. But I tell you, it's getting more accepted. I can honestly say that I'm wasn't into movies like Brokeback Mountain, and I wasn't that excited about witnessing men struggling with their homosexual feelings because I didn't really have any and I wasn't inclined that way. But now I'm way better with it. I can see the sweetness and the love just like I see in heterosexual expressions. So I think everything is moving forward. Polymorphous perverse. Let's get back to polymorphous perverse. Don't you think? Let's just be happy and mind our own business for God's sake and focus on love. When there's love, it just can't be bad. It isn't bad, whatever way it shows up. I do want to talk about S&M for a moment. It's nothing I've ever been into or even turned on by, somebody with a whip or something. No, nothing. But I must admit, in the heights of sexual experience, there is a certain beastness that comes out, and pain and pleasure do somehow touch each other. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as there's love. Okay, love you. I just want to add one other little memory. I used to be a nursery school teacher, and there were boys and girls in my class, 2 and 3 year olds, and we had one bathroom that we all shared, and we didn't close the door when somebody went to the bathroom. The kids went to the bathroom before it was nap time so that they wouldn't pee in bed. And they would take turns going in there and peeing. And I remember a little girl she would take down her overalls to pee. And after she peed, she was sitting down on the floor, putting on her shoes. And there was a boy standing there, standing up and peeing. And she looked up and saw him peeing, and she just reached up, patted his penis, and then went back and kept tying her shoe. It was like so sweet and so innocent. And, these are kids that are probably not going to grow up with any problems. They're just going to accept things. And I love that about the current young people. They're just so much more accepting. That's the direction to go.